start the meeting and welcome everybody. And Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully 2021 will be a lot better than 2020 was actually. And now that we're starting to get vaccines, there's hope that it will be a lot better. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Liz, who will introduce Terry.
Okay. Hi, Terry, one question before I start. Do you want everyone to go on speaker view?
When I share the screen, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to have trouble with your last name because I've been pronouncing it wrong for many, many years. Okay. Terry Antoniewicz.
Antoniewicz, you were just about there. Terry A to Z, that's fine. And not, as I said, don't obsess over it.
Okay. He's been fascinated with handwriting ever since the early 1960s when she discovered two things: the magic of calligraphy and the mystery of handwriting analysis. She pursued a career in calligraphy that spanned more than 50 years, creating, updating, and repairing documents for royalty, governments, and churches around the world. Her hand has even been filmed in the Disney documentary Leonardo da Vinci. Terry's curiosity of graphology developed parallel to her studio work. She has given programs on handwriting analysis for over 20 years across the USA and Canada. Her first AAU presentation was actually in Canada. Her work in graphology has led to work with police departments, private detectives, courts, and human resource departments. Retired from studio work, Terry has branched her interests into graphology to handwriting historian, researching and presenting historical topics related to handwriting, provoking audiences to be curious and think of history with new viewpoints. You're in for a very, very enjoyable ride. And I will now bring the presentation over to Terry. Please put on your speaker view.
Okay. Thank you, Liz, and everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm getting there. Boy, this is... Oop, okay. This will be a program about notable signatures of the U.S. presidents. It's using handwriting analysis. What we're going to look at tonight are what the signatures reveal. Handwriting is like the messages you get from body language. Each little squiggle and line has a neuromuscular interpretation. It is not penmanship. I love when people say, oh, this is a handwriting analysis. Don't look at my handwriting. It is not your handwriting I'm looking at. However, before we had human resources departments and when our country was really spreading west rapidly, if you could write a short piece, it was legible, not too many splatters from the dip pen, not too many crossouts. You were considered to be a person of good character. There are over 5,000 points that are considered. We're certainly not going to get through all of them tonight, but here's some of the features that I'm looking at so that you can help understand. I can help you understand. Your slant. Do you slant to the right? Are you straight up and down? Do you slant to the left? The baseline is how even. Do you go uphill, downhill? Is your line wavy? Your letter sizes and formations, your spacing, upper, middle, and lower zones. And here's what I mean by upper, middle, and lower zones. Your upper zone relates also to your head. That's your goals, your future, your spirituality. Your middle zone refers to your ego, the present. How do you view yourself internally? And how high or low of an opinion you have of yourself. The lower zone represents your id, your libido, your past, and how you react in your earthly beings in life. And here's slant, which I just mentioned. Large, medium, or small in size, or a mixture. So think of your signature as your own corporate logo to the world. how people can read that and tell something about you before they even speak with you. And with that, we will start with some notable presidents, including George Washington. Now, I don't have all the presidents. This would be a full semester course if we did. I don't have them in particular order. I do have them flow for particular reasons so that it can help you understand a little bit more what handwriting analysis is about. George Washington, it has been voted by handwriting specialists as hands down the best signature of any president. But we're not talking about penmanship. George Washington didn't have a lot of education like many of our forefathers did, but he did work very hard at constantly working to educate himself on a regular basis. His handwriting is typical copybook style. That alone is an indication that he follows the rules. You know what to expect out of him. He's dutiful. He's a traditionalist. The overall impression of this handwriting is that he is a very aesthetic person. It shows leadership. And if you'll notice in the name here, we're going to notice this through several names. He connects his first initial to his last name. If this space is very, very close, this person puts a lot of high value on family and family life. His G shows that look how the speed in it, it shows he's a very, very quick thinker, also a very bright one. His N, see the one hump here and it goes down a little bit. It shows he's warm. He has a good sense of self. This first loop here shows he was a very proud man. His A's, this is a sign of a talker. See the open space here? He loved to have an audience. He loved to talk. But when it came to listening, E's are the letter of ears and listening. He wanted you to hurry up and get to the point. He had no patience to listen to anyone giving a long monologue. His legibility shows that he's honest, direct, and straightforward. And it's almost straight up and down, not quite. While he leans into the people a bit, it shows he could work very, very independently. He was so fond of writing letters, he penned 18,000 of them in his lifetime. Only 3 survived. He and Martha agreed to have all their letters destroyed upon their deaths. They didn't know how they would be used in history, and they didn't want anything to be misconstrued. Our next person is John Quincy Adams. Now I don't know when all of the signatures were done in history. There wasn't always a reference date-wise, but this is from the latter years of John Quincy Adams. He was quite ill most of his lifetime, probably because he was so punctilious to everyone. He attached himself to his details with a rightness that was very, very carefully thought out, and he had very strong ownership of his perspective. And when we're talking about the patois of his handwriting, you can see it's strong. What indicates the illness is the shakiness in the writing and his baseline here. Well, usually that's the sign of someone who can't make up their mind. This is the sign of someone who's really working hard to hang on to what little energy he has. This is a very strong handwriting with very strong opinions. And John Adams, the first president, that was only 1 term, he was very cold and foreboding. He made a lot of enemies for having very, very strong opinions. His ideals were set extremely high. The upper zone here, look at how tall, how high these capital letters are. Independence, besides almost being straight up and down, very, very long Y. His signature also shows he was very conflicted from his public side to his private side. You'll see some of the strokes going straight up, some a little to the right, some a little to the left. His crafted letters and his capitals show he was a very deep thinker. and he held extremely high ideals. His I dot is very, very high over his letter I. Notice here how heavy the handwriting is to Jimmy Carter's lighter writing. Jimmy Carter was an extremely comfortable person with himself as president. This is very simple, to the point. The capitals, very, very high goals here. But look at the letter J. The letter J is formally the second I in a Latin alphabet. Capital I in script, this represents the mother form of him, and this shows how attached he was to his mother. This cross over the J in separation, he was very protective of his own, of himself here. Again, the absence of a loop in the Y shows his independence. His big open T shows his high goals, but it shows he is a very dynamic, exacting, and demanding person of himself. It also shows he was extremely sensitive to criticism. Thus, it won't be a surprise that this J cross is, the bar is very, very large, but it also shows a lot of self-control. His exit stroke, now my screen here is covering some of it. The exit stroke on the R is very long. It shows that he was a very generous person, although this R, which is very pointy, shows he had a sharp mind, was very observant. His E, that symbol of ear, shows that he was very friendly and willing to listen to others. The T also shows a very spiritual nature of Jimmy Carter in his life and his work. Here is Bill Clinton. His signature is a balance that shows a mixture of curves and angles, yin and yang. He liked to stand out, shows very much so with his first initial B, very, very large, and then again, the open nature of his personality. The angles in his name shows his strength, and the curves soften the angles. The combination of curves and angles shows that he was an emotional person who he tends to feel things very, very deeply. He's someone that will go at lengths to make to create a concession with other people. He's energized by people. This is a very energized handwriting, restrained but energized. He is an extremely selective listener. And if you see in the points through here, he only likes to listen to people who are very important to him. So remember that if you happen to cross paths with him when you're in New York. He's sensitive to criticism about his appearance. Again, the points here. Remember his McDonald's runs early in his presidency. The loop in his O is retraced. That is a big sign of self-deceit. I won't harp on the issues of where he particularly had self-deceit, but it's also a sign that a mother's conscience is still playing on him here. It's sort of like mother's inner voice going, now, Bill, you know that's not the right thing to do. Overall, his signature shows he does put himself before others, yet he thinks he's better than others. He's more critical of others than himself. The speed of his writing shows that he had a very quick mind, very fast, the fast speed in writing here. He likes to argue and debate, and he makes decisions very, very quickly. And if it's any interest to you, Hillary Clinton's handwriting shows she was much smarter than Bill. I put James Garfield on here because his signature is the second rarest presidential signature. It averages $9,500 for just a signature alone, and over $1,200 if it is a letter that's written with his signature. The reason why his is so valuable is that he was assassinated 200 days within his term. Look at this as compared to Bill or these previous signatures. It's lighter. It's a humble handwriting. He enjoyed being with people. He had an elevated sense of family. Notice this, when you underline, you tend to put on a pedestal, but it's not a heavy line, not garish. He was emphasizing his family. His father was a boxer who died very, very young. Now notice he has a separation from his Christian name or given name to his middle name, which was his father's name. It was Abram. He is very connected. This G also shows that he was very generous, very creative in his thinking. He was not an overimposing person by any means. And you'll notice that this leans to the right a little bit more than the others. He really liked being with the people. Now, again, I can't see from my screen here, but do you see the period at the end of the name? When somebody signs their name and they put a period behind it, that's it. I'm finished. No more discussion. Topic closed. So if you ever notice that in anyone's signature, that's a really good point to realize you're probably not going to go back and re-argue any situations there. Look at this handwriting. Warren Harding was known, he was in Congress, had an affair with a woman who turned out to be a spy for Germany in the end. Wrote in my love letters program, he writes some of the most delicious love letters. His middle name is Gamaliel, which is believed to be a biblical reference to a prince. He was very attached to his family, but not necessarily his marital family. His entry stroke on his W is very ostentatious. He was a talker. His R showed that he had a lot of tolerance for religious views, probably a good thing because I don't think having affairs was a thing that was very well accepted at that time. Again, the connection with his last name, the retracing here, the retracing in the G, and in the last G shows deceit. Again, mother's voice telling him no, no. His overall signature, notice it's all up and down. It is of disharmony. The G in the Harding part is the bowl is split in half. He's dividing part of his life to one side, part to the other. He was thought of as being a very good president until the very end of his term and afterwards. He, of course, was known for the Teapot Dome scandal. And it's interesting that one of his last quotes was, "I am not fit for this office and never should have been here." His handwriting says the same thing. A very beloved president, Abraham Lincoln. And notice here, Abraham connects first initial to his name. He had no middle name. He hated the name Abe, preferred Lincoln. This handwriting is Spencerian, very typical for the 1800s. It shows that Abraham was traditional, reliable. His upper zone shows he has extremely high values, but he's also humble and protective. Notice the dot over the I. He had a very difficult time in office, had many, many challenges, but this I, this little quick turn here, shows that he had a very playful, fun side. He did have a sense of humor. His O, his dot for his A is very, very precise. His the O, he kept confidences. You could depend on him to, if you wanted something left with him, it didn't go anywhere else. His N shows that he was very warm and open-hearted. His L's show creativity, but they also show that he had overcome challenges in his life. What's really interesting here is Lincoln had a namesake nephew who was in London, and his nephew forged his signature in books and made money to put himself through school there. Sadly, he died at a very young age, so we don't know what else he would have done with his signature, but naturally his signature was very close. Another point of interest, Abraham Lincoln and George Washington's signatures are the most forged signatures in our records. There are so many, we don't know what has actually gotten into archives and is not legitimate. Grover Cleveland. He was very, very unpretending, very, very straightforward. He was born in Caldwell, New Jersey, one of the reasons I chose him. To date, he's the only president with a non-consecutive term of presidency. He was elected to his first term, didn't make it the second. The second time he went for election, he made it for 2 full terms. His G shows he's a very altruistic person, and maybe a little weighted down. Notice he goes downhill here a bit. He really did not want to be a politician. His party reminded him, as he was governor of New York, that he had a duty to his party and his country. His D shows he was an extremely talkative and open person, but his E show he rarely listened to anyone. His N shows that he could change, he could yield. This accidental politician had an amazingly interesting start. He was, at that time, a middle-aged single man, which made him suspicious to everyone else in society. So right after the nomination, one of the heirs of the Ball Canning Jar Company decided to spread a rumor and say that he got this one Maria Halpin pregnant, had her put in a sanitarium so she couldn't speak up, and had the baby adopted. The Republican chant for the election was, "Ma, Ma, where's my pa?" Cleveland's reaction was amazing, and probably the politicians could take a lesson. He turned the whole thing around by saying, Mr. Ball just got married. He's only married 3 months and he has a 1-year-old baby. That shut down any of the gossip that was going around. The people's attraction to him was the fact that he had no fancy education. He wasn't independently wealthy. He wasn't part of the political elite. No insider pull. It made him every man's man, which is what this signature absolutely represents. John F. Kennedy. If you didn't have all these 3 names together, you wouldn't know what the J or the middle initial was. But overall, this is a signature of a person who is also known for his famous doodles. Notice the signature goes uphand. He was an optimist. On the surface, if you look quickly, it shows a very quiet person, but deeply unquiet inside. He's always rushing. Very, very quick speed of his writing shows that he was impatient. He never asked. He always took. Look at the stroke here. This is the sign of someone who had the sense of privilege, sort of go ahead and do it. Asking for forgiveness is easier than asking for permission. His closed E's, he was not a listener. He wasn't patient enough to. It's only semi-legible. His capital letters show that he is an extremely high goal setter. Overall, the whole signature says this is a person who doesn't scheme. He reacts right from the heart. On the other hand, he was not a diplomatic person. He got away with a lot, though. He had instinctual and emotional dominance also. look at the J here, which would show how high he sets up his goals and his dominance level. A bit of arrogance. Either you know me or you don't know me. I don't have to present my signature for you to go through a lot to know me. I just have a job to do. Ronald Reagan, for a person who is an executive as well as in the highest office in the country, as well as in the Hollywood and presidents of the Acting Guild, he had very, very legible handwriting, unlike most executives who start just getting down to scribbling. His handwriting, it's a heavy handwriting, but in it, it's a very clear handwriting. And even though we heard all the stories about Nancy controlling everything, notice he kept a space. He knew he had a good sense of self and could handle things on his own. This handwriting shows his priority is clear, it's direct, down to earth, very, very honest. It's fleshed out with attention to details, but it doesn't omit anything. The flow of the writing shows he's a storyteller. Each one of these letters is a part of the story. It's a small detail that he grows in telling the bigger story. His capital letters are slightly larger. They're pronounced. They look very, very proud. Reagan is putting his quality of his life and his character on display. It also shows his sense of poise and how aware of how he comes across to others. He was very comfortable about that, but he knew how to pull it just short of going over the top. It's not an overdone quality for the signature. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, very, very interesting here. His first initials are large. His first initial is large, but even larger is the Delano and the Roosevelt. He was very attached to his mother, Delano, who was also a favorite uncle, and Roosevelt. The smaller part of his name here, he came from a bit of a dynasty, and he knew it. And that family name is, what carried, okay, come back, please. What carried his need to get things accomplished. His first name with the smaller letters is almost hard to read. The O in his name showed he loved to talk. He was very comfortable, obviously, with his fireside chats. Last name, very, very dominant. His signature has a rhythm to it, but not necessarily a readable one. To him, it wasn't him that was important. It was the message that he was passing on to others. He knew his family was prominent, but he didn't use it as a default to have power. He knew what he was. He has a medium to heavy pastorality. Let's look at the letter F here. Notice in here a little tick, and down here there's a little tick. Those are called harpoons or anger ticks. Part of that could have been his frustration with not being able to get around with polio, trying to get things out for the people who were struggling so much through the Depression. The large F itself shows that he loved adventure and he loved being associated with others. This crossbar, he loved being very, very articulate in his communication, whether it was written or whether it was spoken. The triangular nature of this letter F showed he had a non-tolerance for interference in work from any quarter, whether that was from family, from his aides. Once he got writing and working, he needed that time to delve in very, very quietly. Sometimes overall, you can see the frustration in the overall plan he had to work. He had a big job to do as president. Barack Obama. Other than this stroke on the B, there are no other lead-in strokes on his name. It shows he gets right to the point without any kind of commotion. There's a rhythm here, even a little bit of charm. Um, I think this was blown up, so I'm not going to take I'm not going to read this part here as being shaky. I'd have to see the original to determine that. This shows a man who has charm. The bit of pressure in there shows that he had an energy to keep up with big projects, and he had a bounce to his life. His smaller middle zone letters here are rather small. It showed that he had great power of concentration and he had great proficiency. The wavy fashion without any distinct shape shows that he had a changeability. He could be very, very flexible. Overall, this signature reads a tremendous amount of diplomacy in Obama's personality. His openness at the tops here shows his fluency and his self-confidence. His horizontal pressure, which is unusual for most writing. Usually it is the vertical pressure, shows that he couldn't conceive of his own limitations. For some people, that would mean he was an overachiever. For him, he wanted to make the best of himself and he saw no end to the possibilities. The O name in relation to his father, notice it's a little bit smaller, most likely indicating the lack of a paternal presence in his life. And the O, which surrounds the name, like Oprah Winfrey, is also divided in the middle. This is the Greek sign for pi, which shows that all things need to be done in life in proportion. Now, wanted to do this for you so that you could see where I get how I read a lot of the different things. It doesn't seem all abstract to you. Here's the baseline again, fairly even. That is the sign of a perfectionist. He's his fluidity of thoughts, he's not breaking everything. His long final stroke in this one, if it was really looped and flowing, it would be very generous. Here he tends to show his ability to be cautious. The A, he isn't the big talker that we've seen in the other presidents on the large capitals. He likes that pride of being socially prominent. I'm going to have an opportunity for questions afterwards, so please feel free to write your questions down. We go from a president who is very, very diplomatic to one that you're going to grade me on my diplomacy. We have our current president, President Trump. And in this one, you can see the heaviness and the pastorosity of his writing. Very, very strong personality, very, very pointed. This is a sign of a person who's very intuitive, also a workaholic, sharp-minded, competitive, aggressive, determined, driven, fearful, and sometimes hostile. Notice in this handwriting, there is no separation between his given name and his surname. He is very, very tight with his family. In the connection of his last name in here, it's almost like he X's out part of it. In here, it's don't cross me and don't cross my family. If he needs to, he will be combative. In the tick mark here, it shows some anger. I'm going to state the analysis of it, and I'm going to state two different points of view here to be fair and to be very diplomatic. The tick mark in the bottom left-hand corner of the D in Donald shows that he has anger and he can have quite a temper. Conservatives would read this as he's very angry about what happened to America and he's investing in making it better. A liberal interpretation of that same mark would be he's a very angry man with a childlike temper tantrum. His handwriting is indecipherable. Think of it almost like a fence, which keeps him from having people let him know who he is. It's indecipherable. He likes keeping his feelings hidden from the public, and he doesn't want his true self revealed. A conservative would read that. That's good. We don't want our enemies knowing what he thinks. And the liberals would say, he is a sneaky man. I'd never trust anything he says. One point that's interesting here, pre-presidential term, his P came out further here. When Access Hollywood video came out, he buried his P back in here. Before he used it as a phallic symbol. P is virility for men. And it was sort of me, big hunk of man. Now he's buried it back here. And if anybody is going to challenge him on it, it's almost like a little spear here that he could spear someone. I'm looking for your ranking later on. We're going to pass on Winston. Joe Biden, I'm going to close with, our incoming president. This is the writing of someone who is very outgoing, but also the sign of someone who wants others to like him. He seeks approval. He always presents goodwill. He tries to build a consensus, concedes if necessary when disagreements occur that will break up the formation of getting good things accomplished. It shows a very interpersonal leadership style with flexibility, compromise. Notice the quick B. Notice how he leans to the right here, how optimistic he is with the uphill handwriting. It's a thread style handwriting, so he's able to see multi-sides of situations, and he can almost sense what the other side is thinking and how to handle it. This is also the sign of a good negotiator. His J shows he's extremely independent, and he doesn't fluff up the situation or cloud it up with a lot of details. He doesn't like clutter. His E shows the refinement he has and education. The JB combination that he has here, he's confident, he knows his image, but he also knows, besides knowing his good points, he knows his flaws. He has a quick speed. His eye is way over here. Besides a bit of a sense of humor, it also shows he is very, very ready to tackle issues with diplomacy. The extension in his letters also shows a great generosity and the fact that he is an intellectual thinker. He has two kinds of T-bars in his names, which in his writing. I know that's not in his name, but I did want to state that showed he was happy working on everyday problems close to his heart, and he also sets very high goals. Wow, that time went so quick. I want to thank you. We are going to have that time to answer questions. This gives you a little bit of the background here. So I guess I will stop sharing so we can go back to any questions. Chevy, can you unmute so that, or as you're speaking, make sure you see this little microphone on the left. If you'll unmute that when you have a question. Who's the first brave person? Maisie, were you asking? There you go.
Sherry, did you have a question?
I did. I wanted to know how long, on the average, how long does it take you to analyze one signature? And how sure, and do you ever feel like you have to go back and look again because you're not sure you really got it?
Well, a signature can be a real quick read just to pick up a few points, but it depends on the situation. If I'm being asked to read a signature for, and it's usually more than a signature, but if the police or a private detective is asking me to read it, I'm looking for more details. If I'm just doing a quick one, now the presidents were a lot longer. I spent several years collecting material. And yes, I do go back from time to time to see if I missed something. Also know, anytime I do my signature analysis program, I have the participants sign their name 3 times on the same sheet of paper, one after the other, because you never sign your name the exact same way. Although when you look at it, you will see patterns, but your signature, if at one time you went to the bank and you were in the early stages of Parkinson's, before your doctor knew that you had Parkinson's, the bank teller, when we used to go in every week to deposit our checks, could tell you that you had Parkinson's. Your handwriting shows disease. It shows when you're happy, angry, lying. It's a neurological message from your head down to your hand. And even notice the day when you're tired at the end of the day. For when I'm teaching the class, I have people write something and date it for 30 days straight, and they will notice distinct differences as they are looking at the handwriting. And I ask them to note if they got really happy news, your handwriting gets a little bit larger, it goes faster. When you get sad news, you slow down, you become more reflective. You can ask about your own handwriting too. Jerry?
Me? Sherry,
Yes.
are you self-taught? I don't remember, I know you gave a little extra introduction, but I got on late. So are you self-taught?
I am self-taught. I actually was able to get a couple of classes over the last few years, but it was repeating what I knew. There was no course for this when I started in the 60s. It was, and there was very little information for it. It just seemed really intuitive. When I was updating documents and I had to duplicate someone else's handwriting for historical documents, that led me into a lot of the history, the styles of writing, the frame of mind of the writer. So I did a lot of forensic work. So this is going back to the 60s now that I've been working on this.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So Terry, are there courses now for this or what?
There are some courses. I dropped in on a couple of them. I didn't think Bart, I can't remember his last name right now. He really super sells himself. He does have some good information, but there is no certification of any kind for this. It's basically working with someone, and I did work with forensic graphologists who trained me with a lot of details that they learned from on the job. And if you ever hear, do you follow the old Perry Mason series?
Yeah.
Yay for him. Oh, we'll have to talk to the handwriting specialist. We'll have to see the graphologist. Now, there's 2 ways that handwriting is done. One is this method of reading the personality. There are still people who feel it's a parlor game. There is a lot of information if it's used right. The other way is in forensics, and that's telling for forgeries. I've worked with banks. In fact, out in Monroe with one of the men's clubs, I helped a man clear up he was being charged for his stepdaughter's school loans, and she forged his signature to the papers, and he was then released of any responsibility of paying for the loan. Another one was out in Chicago. A business partner forged the name of a person on all the loans and then dumped him with all the responsibility and the legal aspects of paying for it. He had to close down his business, but we did prove that the signature was forged. So there's 2 ways in going with it. The other part is working with the police departments, and when they're saying, hey, Tara, we've got someone, we're on the fence. We're not sure if they're lying or if they're being honest. And it's really been interesting to work with them. And this is where we're using handwriting analysis. You're barking up the wrong tree on this one. Oh, dig deeper on that one. So it's really helped save a lot of time. And at one time, very high positions for companies where they had to go through a handwriting analysis to see if they truly were presenting themselves honestly. Your handwriting can tell if you are dishonest or not.
Wow.
Sherry?
How did you get, it's very, very impressive and certainly sounds interesting, but how did you get all these different avenues for using your knowledge? Was it networking? I know eventually it was reputation. But people, but how'd you do it initially? Because it's very varied.
It is. If first of all, I had an incredible husband when he was alive, who was working for a small company that grew, and we got transferred a lot, 35 times in a very short period of time.
Oh.
So it always meant trying to figure out what was available at the time, economy wise. I couldn't always do my studio. So that always put me in touch with a lot of interesting people. I'm curious in nature, so anything that was partly related, I'd connect with. In moving around, I just would go with a lot of groups just to connect. And so it's from so many different ways, but a good part of it is I'm one heck of a curious person.
Yeah.
Carol?
It's very, yeah. Okay, go on.
Hello, do I
Take it, Hazel.
what? Oh, you have another question, Sherry?
No.
Oh. So do you ever watch the Pawn Shop on TV?
A long time ago I did.
Because they often call in an expert to check
Yes.
to see if the handwriting is legitimate.
Right. And again, I'm called in for things like that too. Historical documents for a couple of reasons. One, somebody wants to verify it's legitimate. The other thing is that the style of writing in the 1800s was very, very elaborate, and lettering styles that were hard to read. So they will bring me in to read it from an historical point of view. I often call to historical groups to help them read the material. Now, if you'll find it interesting, because handwriting has been removed from the core curriculum, the biggest complaint that Ancestry.com gets from 40-year-olds and younger, the biggest complaint is, I just paid for a document and I can't read it.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. There are 13 states that have consulted with me about putting handwriting back in the core curriculum because we have seen analytical thinking go down. And when they went back to the studies, they showed that when children start cursive writing, or what we call connected writing, they start their own independent analytical thinking. By taking handwriting out, we have eliminated the need or the push for analytical thinking. We also remember more when we write. Even reading from a regular book, not from an electronic reader, we don't retain as much. So handwriting has a value yet. It needs to go back into core curriculum, but we'll never have it like we did when you and I grew up with it. You won't have the penmanship books. Remember the copy books we bought?
Yeah.
And the lessons, and yeah. Ellen, you have to unmute yourself. Put the cursor over your microphone, or at the bottom left of your screen, there's a mute button there.
Okay, I wanted to understand better how cursive writing affects analytical thinking.
When you connect the letters, you start connecting thoughts instead of just being fed thoughts and then feeding the same thing back. You're taking it in, you're thinking about it, and you're connecting things to form your own opinions. the analytical thinking in the last 6 years of college graduate testing has shown that analytical thinking is slipping away very, very quickly. They're taking in so much information, but they're not necessarily judging it for its value and determining if it's a valid statement or that they can put their own input into that thinking.
But can we prove that that is related to cursive writing?
The studies have shown it has been, yes. And so,
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
definitely think when you take notes where you're actually writing, usually in cursive, taking notes, that helps you retain the information, and also you're making decisions as to what to take notes about.
absolutely. Writing things down versus tapping in on a keyboard gives better memory retention, and allows you to pull thoughts out to try and make do some of your own analytical thinking. Also know that each of us has about 4 different styles of writing. You're on the phone, you want to remember something, you just scribble it, and 5 minutes later you wouldn't be able to read it. You have remember when you signed your mortgage papers and how everything was perfect, T was crossed, the I's were dotted. And then we have a very casual handwriting. So we do have about 4 to 5 different styles for ourselves. And if you get a chance to go through some old letters that you've written and then write something now, you'll even see a difference in the writing as you get older. There's a difference. Your energy levels, your neuromuscular power changes. So yeah, it's there. It's there.
Carol?
Carol?
So I worked at the Board of Elections and we used to compare the signatures.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so it's controversial because the signatures don't match
yep.
because they're scratched. Now
That's
people,
right.
they only scratch now. They don't.
Right.
So
What do you do about that, Carol?
what?
That always interested me.
What?
How you deal with the
How do you deal with the, I mean,
differences in the signatures?
I
Do you
mean,
ask them to produce?
some people just made, some people that work the elections made the person do a, what do you call those ballots? The
Oh, the paper ballot sample?
ballot, because they didn't
Write it out.
the handwriting. We weren't allowed to ask for, for a vote for any ID,
Yeah,
Oh,
but sometimes you could recognize the scratch, but not a lot, it wasn't. It's not
well,
the same.
here's another job for me. I can start showing you how to look for certain
I
features.
did. That's what
Okay.
I did. And I thought it was, but some of them just, like just scribble.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it's not their handwriting from
right.
when.
Again, we've gotten away from the image that our handwriting represents our personality. What do we want to tell the person that's going to read our signature or writing? Do we want to say there's some respect, that the message has a value, or let's hurry up and get this over with?
And then there's also 2 different signatures. One that you'll write on a document that shows
Right.
your name. And the other one, you don't want anyone to know your signature. So I have that scratch signature like a doctor.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that comes up a lot for me too is when they say, the person says, oh, I don't want anybody to forge my signature. That's why I make it illegible. Please, people, that's one of the easiest signatures to forge.
The scratch,
Easiest.
the scratch one.
The scratch one, because there's a lot more there's a lot of points to it, so there's a lot more places you can logically stop when it's rounded out and flowing. You notice the hesitation marks. That's one of the giveaways in forgeries. The other thing that's difficult too is when we're being asked to sign on a plastic surface with our signature, like we do with our driver's licenses, that does not represent our signatures at all.
yeah.
But I don't even try. I don't even try.
Yeah.
I just make a C. And
Yeah. And that's part of the encouraging of not doing a formal signature anymore too.
And they
Is
don't
it-
even care if you write your signature. You could put an X and they wouldn't care.
Well, look how we, before the chip came out for our credit cards, we just hurried up and scribbled something on the plastic screen. And then when the screen became so scratched and we couldn't, even if you cared, it was going up and down all the grooves, you couldn't do it. One of the questions that came up quite a bit, if you're left-handed, do you always do a backhand swing? How many say yes? Okay, it's a no. Again, that, by leaning to the right, you're outgoing with people, you like being with people. If you're almost on the baseline, if you're so far right, you're on the baseline, you like to know everybody's business. If you're straight up and down, or even just a slight slant either way, you tend to be independent. And remember, we used to say the party poopers, the very, very reticent people, where the party actually takes the poop out of them. They're the ones that lean to the left, and the ones that lean almost to the left on the baseline, they just like being hermits.
Anybody else have any questions?
I know you have a meeting, and I thank you for this time. It's been such a pleasure to be with you. I hope you found something exciting or interesting in this tonight.
Yeah,
Liz?
Terry, thank you very much. This was really, really interesting. And I have to
My
say,
pleasure.
totally
My
different.
pleasure.
It
Thank
was-
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Terry. It was wonderful.
Everyone, stay
Thank you.
positive, test negative, stay healthy.
You're
Thank
welcome
you.
to stay for our
Thank you
meeting
so
if you
much.
want, but it probably wouldn't be interesting. So if you want to stay, you can.
I'm going to let you guys go on this one, but I'll check with Liz about connecting with the AUW. As I said, I already started up in Canada with them. So
Okay, good.
it's been a pleasure. Thank
Thanks.
you,
Good night.
everyone. Thank you for your time.
I can't get my clap
Wonderful
off.
job.
How do you get the clap off?
Oh, I don't know. Everyone has one.
Yep.
Wait. I can't get my
How do you
clap.
get the what off, Carol? Oh, the hand.
Oh, it went off. It went off.
No, your hand's still there, Carol. Oh,
I
no,
think-
there it is.
No, I think it just goes off in time.
Oh, okay, yeah, there's.
I kept clicking it, so
Oh,
it's
Sherry,
stayed
your hand is up.
on. All right.
Okay, business meeting. First of all, before we start, I want to welcome Miranda Scott. For you
Yeah,
new
hi, Miranda.
probably don't know Miranda.
Miranda.
She's waving, so everybody wave back at her. Miranda, how many years ago was it, Miranda?
I joined, when I joined, it was in
When you moved
1988.
to Philly.
Oh, 2016, 5 years ago.
Okay, if I was going to say 3 years ago. Anyway, Miranda was a member for quite a few years and moved to Philly 5 years ago. So we do welcome to see her. It was nice to see her back.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's one advantage of Zoom. We get to see people we don't see very often. So I don't think Zoom has many advantages, but that's one of them. So anyway, welcome, Miranda. It's nice to see you. Okay, moving on to the business meeting. The minutes of our November 12th meeting were online. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept them? Somebody? Okay, Sue, is there a, what am I going to say, a second? Liz? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from the last meeting? Just raise your hand or do something. Okay, nobody's opposed, right? Nobody ever is, okay. The treasurer's report was included in the January, February newsletter. There really isn't much of a report because there's not much really going on. If anybody has any questions or comments, contact Linda Levine or me. Okay. Anything from membership? Rhonda, are you here?
She's here.
I don't see you. Are you?
Yes.
Are you on page 2?
The host muted
There
you.
are.
It's
Okay. Do you have anything for membership, Rhonda?
nothing new right now.
Nothing new, no. I really wouldn't think so. Okay, Liz, do you have anything you want to say about program?
Sherry, you want to tell about February?
Yes, February, we're having it's being called a book talk, and it's going to be done by Elaine Sanchez. Eileen, excuse me. Eileen Sanchez, who sometime back was a teacher in New Orleans. And she took her experiences plus research and put these all together into a book called Freedom Lessons. And I know Liz read the whole thing, and I've read part of it. And the book itself, I'm finding interesting. I'm enjoying it. But you don't have to have read the book, but she's going to come and talk about the book, how she put it together and all the publishing, etc. So I think it should be an interesting night.
What's
You also
interesting,
want to talk about her experiences teaching down in Louisiana?
I would imagine that's going to go into the talk, because how is she going to transfer from the book she wrote, which is a novel, without including her experiences and how she turned them over into a story? So I would imagine the answer is yes. She's very excited about coming.
Oh, good.
She
Okay.
wants to do it.
Marilyn.
Just to give you some more background and so that you can all appreciate it, this is her story as a young white teacher in a segregated school in a part of Louisiana. And while she is there trying to fit in and acclimate, the desegregation law comes about, and it is then the time to desegregate. And what the white folks and the Black folks feel about the integration of the school, and etc. And it just happens to coincide with Black History Month, and it happens to coincide with the anniversary of the desegregation law, the national law.
Very good. And also on Amazon Prime, I got the book for free. Those of you who have it, they offer a couple books every month that you can get for free on Amazon Prime, and that's how I got the book. So you can check that.
Oh, I didn't see that offered. I would have.
How do you pull up
What's the
Amazon
name of
Prime
it
to get
again?
it?
What's the name of it again?
Freedom Lessons.
In what
But-
month was it free? Because don't you have to do it in that month?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know, because I got it a month ago and it's still on my Kindle.
Okay.
Really?
Try it.
But how did you get to that part on Amazon Prime? I know it means, but I can't pull it up because I can't
Well, if
remember.
you go on Amazon, go on your Kindle where it says books,
Okay,
and it just pulled it up. I just
Wow.
roll down.
I'll
And
try that. Okay.
I get a few books every month free.
Okay. I read a sample of her book. So when the sample stopped, I was kind of disappointed because I was getting into the story.
I'm sorry, what's the author?
Eileen
Sanchez.
I'm sorry?
Eileen.
Sanchez. Sanchez, and first name is Eileen.
Yeah, we have it on the website. It's on-
Okay.
Okay, March is Interbranch. So Maisie, that will be on Northern Monmouth.
Oh, she's going to want me to do May. I don't have that.
No, it's a
Northern Ocean.
Northern Ocean. That'll be on their Zoom, right? Yes.
And I don't offhand know the date. It's somewhere.
March
Yeah,
11th.
we have that in the newsletter.
That's also on the website.
Yeah.
And when Sherry comes back, she will tell you, if she does it, about April, the one we were supposed to have last April. We're going to have this April, it's the same people who are doing the sex of the pioneer women, but they're doing something else with costumes. I don't know what it is, but they'll be zooming on there. May will be our scholarship.
Excuse me, wait before you go.
Oh, there
on.
she is. Good. Sherry, you want to tell them
The truth
about
of the matter is, I couldn't in my head get the exact title, so I had to get back to my notes.
Okay, good. Sherry will
Okay,
tell you that.
yes, April it's not going to quite be what we originally wanted, but when things get back to normal, we'll hire these people to come and do the show, the presentation that I found so enjoyable. It's done by two women, a mother and a daughter. They call themselves Grounded Good Wife. They're really out there. I just have to tell you, they're really out there with their herbs and they're this and they're that. It's not who I am, but it's rather interesting. And they're going to do a Zoom presentation called Suffragettes in Corsets. And as Liz said, it's going to have to go from colonial time forward. I don't know how far forward, but how clothing and underwear clothing has changed as the environment has changed. The atmosphere of social life has changed. And they always add humor into their presentation. So I do believe it's going to be enjoyable.
And I guess for May, you'll have to talk to the scholarship people. And hope, wouldn't it be wonderful if come June, we are actually being able to have a luncheon?
Would be nice.
Or a picnic or something where
Or
we
something,
actually
yeah.
see each other in person. So we're hoping for that. We're
Yeah.
praying for that. Okay.
And
That's it.
excuse me, what is the interbranch topic?
I don't remember.
It's
Kevin?
on the state website. And
Ellen, we'll send out emails about it. I don't remember. I don't remember the date or the topic. All I know is it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't have to do it.
No, we don't. Hey, but Sherry,
Yes.
while we're on the subject of interbranch and on the subject of those ladies from Woodbury, Connecticut.
Yes. Mhm.
How's about, and this is just an aside for the moment, we haven't got to talk about it, trying to book them for our interbranch in 2022. Just a thought. How's that grab you?
It grabs me fine. I don't think that's a problem.
No, I
I'm
don't
sure,
think so
I'm
either.
sure
It's
they
just a
take
thought I had.
bookings way in advance.
Oh, yeah. Well, they may take, plans way in advance. Whatever.
You-
We can talk about it.
Are you sure it's 2020? Because no one did 2020, right? There
Yeah,
no
that was
one-
Northern Monmouth and they had to cancel.
Right, and this year, and so in 2022 is Northern Ocean?
No, Northern Ocean is this year.
Right, Northern Ocean, so shouldn't Northern Monmouth come before us?
It'll be our turn. Northern Monmouth really couldn't do it. It's us, Northern Monmouth, Northern Ocean.
So that we just skipped their year.
We just
Okay.
skipped it, yeah, because they couldn't do it.
Okay.
So anyway, just a thought to throw out.
Okay.
Laurel, do you have anything for communications? Laurel, there you are. Anything?
Not really. We're going to need the information from the next newsletter, the middle of February.
Okay.
But I just wanted to thank the people that have been sharing their information about the vaccine, and I think that's helping a lot of people. And when people have some positive experiences, I think that will be very useful.
And Phyllis, you want to talk about your trip? I assume, there you are. Okay.
Hi. Okay, so next Thursday, we're having our Zoom discussion about our virtual trip to the Tenement Museum. And I got a wonderful response. Right now, I have 39 people signed up for this Zoom discussion. And a number of people have volunteered to tell their own stories or anecdotes about family members who were immigrants at some point in time. Going back, we have one person who has a relative who goes back to the 1700s who's going to be sharing her story. And we have, some really interesting stuff. And I prepared a presentation, kind of review everything that you saw and questions. So it should be great. I hope so. And February, Nancy Krosner is in its Black History Month, so it works out really well. She's preparing something related to the Underground Railroad. So that's going to be on February 18th.
And specifically New Jersey's role.
Great.
Great. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Have some nice things to look forward to for this month and next month. And for March, I'm hoping to work out something with the Art Guild to have a Zoom presentation. We went there once before, that's in Shrewsbury, and I'm hoping that he can work something out for us. I don't think that there are are YouTube videos available. So it would be a little bit different. He would be doing something as though we're going on a trip that day, you know, the day of the Zoom, he would be presenting, but I'll have to get back to you on that because I don't know that, I don't have definite information on that yet.
Okay. And old business, just a couple of updates. First of all, I again want to thank everybody for being so generous in December for donating to 180 Turnaround. The fact that we raised over $1,200, I think was absolutely amazing. So again, I just want to thank everybody. I thought this year it would be less, and it wasn't. I think it was more. So that was great. And it certainly is something worthy that we're supporting. So it's nice to know that the Increst groups are still meeting as well as they can. The book groups certainly are. And the cinema obviously is. We've gotten emails from Chevy about that. The game groups, I'm still trying to figure out how to do bridge. I'm sort of in contact with Janet and we're trying to figure this out. Liz's mission committee obviously can't really do much of anything until life gets back to normal. So that's pretty much on hold. Trudy, do you want to say anything about the book sale, or there really isn't much at this point we can say?
Huh?
And Trudy, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Well, yeah, there's not much we can say. We have been collecting books. We have lots of books.
Yeah.
The only thing I've been thinking about is logistics on how we could use the church, how we could do a one-way through the church. And, you know, to keep people socially distanced. I know in June, things may be very different, but to see if we could do that. So figure out some kind of map or what we could do. So if anybody has ideas, please let me know.
Yeah, and Trudy, you got, well, most of you got my email today about the board meeting. I haven't figured out which day we're going to have it yet. I'll get back to everybody tomorrow, but we can talk about the book sale board then. So, and I'll get back to you. Okay. The last thing I wanted to mention is I just got some new information from National, and they want to update their bylaws. And I wanted to make everybody aware of exactly what National has in mind. So I'm just going to read part of what I got today. AAUW National Board of Directors strongly supports elimination of the degree requirement for membership and will put the requirement up for a membership vote this spring. This important change is a critical step in bringing AAUW's bylaws and membership requirement in line with our mission of advancing equity for women and girls. While AAUW is fiercely committed to educational attainment for all women, given our commitment to inclusion, this is simply the right thing to do. Proposals to eliminate the degree requirement for membership have come before the membership for vote a number of times. The board feels very strongly that while the degree requirement made perfect sense at AAUW's inception, this requirement is now counter to our mission and limits our ability to build the capacity needed to increase our impact as an organization. So obviously AAUW National is planning on getting rid of the membership requirement. Now, if you care to comment on this, and yes, you can, the comment period is right now through February 5th, at 5 o'clock. And then voting will begin. And I assume that each one of us is going to have a vote. Marilyn, am I right?
Oh, I'm muted. Yeah, you are right.
Yeah, okay. So each one of us will have a vote. The voting period is April 7th to May 17th. Now, there are also a few changes to public policy. You can see all these at the AAUW website, and I'm going to send out tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to forward all this to everybody so you can actually read it and see what National has in mind. If you have an opinion about them changing the membership bylaws and making it just open membership, please, you can go online to the AAUW website and comment. Please do that. If you feel strongly about it, please do it. I'll send out also a couple of instructions about how to find this on the national website. I did it today, and yeah, you can certainly find it. But you have until February the 5th to figure out if you want to say anything. I really think that since this is a drastic change, that I think a lot of us probably should comment either one way or the other. I'm not necessarily pushing this. I'm just saying that we should comment because this is a major, major change. And yes, they have tried this before. Well, they've tried it many times. Every time they had a national convention, they would try it. Every time they tried it, it was voted down. And now they're trying it again. So just to give you kind of a bit of background. And years ago, I remember at a couple of board meetings, we as a branch had one vote. I think each branch nationwide had a vote. So then we had a vote in our branch, and our branch always voted down the change in membership. And obviously it was voted down on a national level too. So anyway, does anybody have any comments at the moment? Okay, Marilyn.
Just when you send us that email, Maisie, could you include the information about the town hall meeting?
Yes, I will do. Oh, yes, definitely. In fact, I meant to do that. Yeah, I'll send that out too. Thanks for reminding me. I'm afraid I was gotten so hung up, I would have forgotten it. Yeah, let me just write that down. There is a town hall meeting. Do you remember the date offhand, Marilyn? It's soonish.
I have January the 19th in my head, but I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
and it's on my calendar
that's correct.
downstairs, so I can't tell you. But it might be worth, everybody can go to this town hall meeting, and I certainly will send that out too, where I gather they're going to be talking about this change of membership and maybe going more into their rationale for it. So I'll send out both things, and I'll do that tomorrow or the next day. Anybody have any comments to that? Please, everybody, give National your input. Okay. Is there anything else? Then is there a motion to adjourn? Marcia, and second, Marilyn. Okay, so thanks, everybody. And Liz, and Sherry, this was really a good meeting. This worked out great.
Yeah.
So I don't know, see everybody around sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everybody.
Stay well.
Good night.
Good night.
They will.
Bye.
All of you.
Bye.
Be well.
Good night.